Hi everyone. So the question is, hence prove that the square of any integer can be written in the form 4t or 4t plus 1, where t is a positive integer. Now, here the keyword is the word hence. And whenever we have this word hence, it means that we can reference to the answer of previous part to answer the subsequent part. So let's just take a look at the previous part of the question. Explain why any integer can be written in the form of 4k or 4k plus 1 or 4k plus 2 or 4k plus 3, where k is a integer. It can be positive or negative integer. So having answered this question already, let's now go back to this question. In the previous part, we already explained that why any integer can be written as 4k or 4k plus 1 or 4k plus 2 or 4k plus 3. That means no matter whatever integers, you can always write them in one of these four forms. Okay. So let's then examine for each of these forms if we can prove that the square of any integer, can be written as 4t or 4t plus 1, where t is a positive integer. Okay. So let's take the first case. If an integer can be written in the form of 4k, then let's square this. So the square of 4k will be 4k squared, and that will give us 16k squared. 16k squared can be written as 4 multiplied with 4k squared. And since k is an integer, so k squared will also be an integer. Excuse me for a minute. Since k is an integer, k squared will also be an integer, and 4k squared is also an integer. So that means this whole thing is an integer which can be represented by the variable t. Why have I taken the variable t? Is simply because that is what is given in the question. I could have taken any variable, a or b or c or z, whatever, but I just want to be consistent with what is given in the question. Okay. So the square of any integer 4k can be written as 4 times a positive integer t. Since k squared is positive, 4 times k squared is also positive. Hence, t is a positive integer. Now, let's take our next case. Another way that an integer can be written is 4k plus 1. Squaring this, we get 16k squared plus 8k plus 1. And let's just take these first two terms here. We can factorize out 4 from here and write it as 4 multiplied with 4k squared plus 2k plus 1. Now we already know that 4k squared is an integer, right? 4k squared is an integer. One integer added with another integer 2k. Since k is an integer, 2 multiplied with k is also an integer. Two integers when added will give us another integer, which I can write as t. Again, why t is so that I can be consistent with what is given to you in the question. So this can be written as 4 times another integer t plus 1, which means if an integer is represented as 4k plus 1, then the square of that integer can be written as 4t plus 1, where t is a positive integer. Next is the third way of writing any integer is 4k plus 2. So let us square this and let's factorize out 2. So we can write this as 2 times 2k plus 1 squared, which is 2 squared, that means 4, and 2k plus 1 squared. Now, since k is an integer, 2k is also an integer, and 2k plus 1 is an integer. Square of that will give us another positive integer, right? Square of any integer is a positive integer. So that means this can be written as 4t, where t is where t represents 2k plus 1 squared. This whole thing is a positive integer represented by t. Let's take the last case, 4k plus 3. So this is the last case that we have seen an integer can be written as, and let us square this. Squaring this and applying a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, we get 16k squared plus 24k plus 9. And 9 can be written as 8 plus 1. So let's write this as 16k squared plus 24k plus 8 plus 1. This. Let us factorize out 4 from the first 3 terms. We can also factorize out 8, but I don't need it. I want 4 so that I can represent it in the form of 4t plus 1. So 4 times 4k squared plus 6k plus 2 plus 1. Now, this term inside the parenthesis is an integer. 4 multiplied with k squared is an integer, plus 6k is an integer, plus 2 is an integer. So the whole thing is an integer which can be represented as t, 4t plus 1. Again, why do I choose t? Because I want to be consistent with what is given in the question. So what we see now is, of the 4 forms in which an integer can be written, the square of those can be written in the form of an integer 4t or 4t plus 1. Here also 4t and 4t plus 1. So the square of any integer can be written as either 4t or 4t plus 1. Now, just one thing I want to draw your attention. K can be any integer, positive or negative. But t is always a positive integer, and that is consistent because if k, whether k is positive or negative, k square is positive. Similarly, over here, 4 multiplied with k square is bigger than 2k. So even if k is negative, okay, 4k square plus 2k will still give you a positive value. Okay? Because this can be 4 times 2k squared plus 2k. So 2k squared has definitely bigger value than 2k, and so it's a positive value. That's why t will be positive. Here also, since we have 2k plus 1 squared, t is positive. And finally, in this case also, you can see by your own, take some examples, take some values of k, positive and negative, and you will see that this is always positive. 4k squared plus 6k plus 2 is always positive. Hence proven that the square of any integer can be written in the form 4t or 4t plus